Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Jonathan, Your Excellencies, Your Excellency Prince Bandar, to all of the delegates. It's a huge honor for me to be here and for me to welcome to the stage the Deputy Minister of Tourism, Mahmoud Abdulhadi, to sit down with me for a frank exchange on the future of tourism in Saudi Arabia. Mahmoud, Your Excellency. So, Your Excellency,
good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward so much to this discussion. Saudi Arabia, in our global context and in the Middle Eastern context, is without doubt the greatest transformation currently going on in global tourism. The perception shift of the kingdom from 10 years ago to today is one that's almost unfathomable. How do you think it's going? And what steps are you taking to try and guide that perception?
Thank you, David. And first of all, I'd like to welcome the audience. Good morning. And thank you for attending these opening sessions. And FHS, obviously, is an important part of what we're trying to do here in the Kingdom in terms of diversifying our tourism investment activities. And these conferences are extremely important. So thank you very much for your active participation. So, David, to answer your question, I think Vision 2030 is, for lack of a better word, a change program like no other. When it was launched, it was extremely ambitious. There was some healthy skepticism around some of the objectives and what we wanted to do. But I think as Saudis, we have proven time and time again that when we make promises, we deliver. And Vision 2030 is no exception to this. There was a report published recently on the 10th anniversary of the vision. And if you look into that report, you will find some very interesting statistics, such as 93% of the initiatives that were launched are either completed or on target for their completion dates by 2030. Interestingly, it was a diversification play. Our economy was a single commodity dependent economy. Today, around 50% or 51% of our GDP comes from the non-oil sector, and 47% of that GDP is actually contributed by the private sector. So the vision is delivering. The Saudis are delivering on the promise made by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince. And ultimately speaking, it's just amazing. From a personal perspective, I have never seen an organization that is so in tune with what its leadership wants. And when I say the organization, I don't just mean the government. I mean the Saudi government, the civil service, the private sector, and the citizens. So not only are we in the same boat, but we're also rowing at the same pace, and it's incredible to watch.
In terms of, and I think all of us who've spent, particularly foreigners who've spent a vast amount of time in the kingdom, the Saudi personality, the magnanimity, the beauty, the generosity, the kindness, the warmth is endemic to the kingdom. It's endemic to the people. How do you imbue that into the brand?
So it's a good point. I mean, part of our mission at the Ministry of Tourism and the tourism ecosystem is to deliver a visitable, investable, sustainable tourism environment. And as you mentioned, hospitality is in our DNA. It's something that we have been doing for thousands of years. We've been hosting pilgrims. It's in our DNA as a part of our desert culture, our mountain culture. We offer refuge to travelers, protection. The key to our mission is to convert that, as you said, endemic characteristic into a business opportunity, into career opportunities. And that is why when we looked at Vision 2030, and part of our diversification play was a major shift into tourism, because tourism as an industry, it was something that is, like I said, in our blood, which should have made the transition easy, and it has. And it provided an opportunity, as I said, to provide employment and other investment opportunities. The government invested heavily in what we're calling the giga projects, and we're starting to see these come to fruition. We have some colleagues from, for example, Ru'al Medina, where there are large projects, but also we're seeing other projects come to life, such as Dir'iyah, Giddiya. His Highness mentioned the projects in the Red Sea. I believe this year they have 10 plus projects that are coming to the market. You have projects in Jeddah downtown, Jeddah Central, and you'll see these projects starting to deliver on the promises that were made. I think in addition, so, all of this, including the training, including the facilitation that we do for young Saudis to enter the market. Again, just to second something that His Highness mentioned, the ministry is committed and dedicated to providing training for Saudi human capital to enter the market, to deliver on that authentic experience that is uniquely Saudi. And that all contributes to our brand.
We were talking earlier, and we were talking about diverse innovation or diversity and innovation. In terms of the product, in terms of the destination, obviously what's going on in e-gaming, in sports, in the World Cup, and all of these incredible, and I challenge you and say, incredibly innovative programs, how far is that diversity going to go?
I mean, again, I mentioned our mission earlier, which is to deliver this visitable, investable, sustainable tourism environment. Without product, without a reason to visit, that would not be possible. So this is all of the events that you mentioned, all of the the big global events that are coming to the kingdom, whether we're talking about Expo, the World Cup, or the Asian Games, the Winter Asian Games, or any of the sporting events that we see today, including Formula One, Formula E, boxing, tennis, name it, it's there. E-gaming is a major part of what we're doing. This is all part of a very focused, very clear strategy to deliver on the promises that we made. None of this came by accident. This is all through hard work. It's all through a laser-focused effort to deliver on this. And we're starting to see results. Now, delivering on these events is one thing. Putting in the environment around it to enable the private sector to flourish, to enable people to be employed, is another. We've worked on major regulatory reform. We've worked on a lot of initiatives to ease doing business in the kingdom. And, again, we focused our marketing efforts through the Saudi Tourism Authority on markets that deliver key spend. So we haven't been marketing randomly. We haven't been trying to attract visitors en masse. It's very targeted. It's return-driven, shall we say. And the results of this, if you take a look, some of the numbers were mentioned earlier for 2023. Last year or 2023, was a major year for us. It was our first year that we hit 100 million visitors. While I can't tell you the exact numbers, but hopefully some of you can do the math, we're going to see growth this year. We're talking 8% growth in the number of visitors. Last year, we delivered 256 billion riyals worth of direct spend. Not last year, 2023. Last year, or 23 to 24, we're looking at roughly 14% growth in spend. Interestingly, even the composition of that visitation and spend is very interesting. Leisure, which a lot of people 5 years ago thought was impossible, leisure today accounts for, if we're looking at our domestic visitors, it's over 35% of visitors and over 30% of spend. If you're looking at our inbound visitors, leisure accounts for over 20% of the numbers of visitors that are coming and over 20% of spend. So we've had a major shift in how we do things, what we do, and it's delivering in terms of the numbers.
At FHS, we see, as we would expect, a plethora of international brands. All of the large, particularly in the hospitality space, the large international brands are here and they're developing and making agreements in force across the kingdom. What about Saudi brands, and what about developing emerging destinations? How far will those Saudi brands impact the future perception of the kingdom?
So the Saudi brands are a very interesting piece to look at. And at the ministry and with our friends at the Tourism Development Fund and throughout the whole ecosystem, we're actually looking and supporting quite a number of startup brands that are happening or that are coming up in the kingdom. Now, obviously, the international brands are of extreme importance. They bring global visitors. They bring something that is familiar to those global visitors. But those visitors are also looking for authentic experiences. It is all about visiting Saudi Arabia is about authenticity, and how we deliver that authenticity is through our own people. And if we were having our own people delivering an authentic Saudi experience in a Saudi brand, then that's the perfect mix. And again, we're being hosted today by people who are pioneers in this space. Al Khuzama has been a long-standing hospitality brand in the kingdom, and they offer that unique blend of Saudiness to visitors. In addition to this, we're seeing new and innovative ways of delivering this, whether we're talking about some of the Red Sea projects with some of the unique brands that they're delivering, whether we're talking about Dur'iyah, or whether we're talking about pure private sector investments in Riyadh, in our emerging destinations. We're seeing this, and it is highly successful. And we're also seeing that it resonates very well with visitors that are coming to the kingdom.
Your Excellency, the Tourism Investment Enablement Program, or TEEP, has introduced reforms and incentives to make doing business much easier. How is it being recognized? What feedback are you getting from the program?
So, this is part of a much bigger reform program that we're working on. The beauty of tourism, the beauty and challenge of tourism, if you're sitting in our shoes, is that it is a highly lateral sector. We are affected by transport, we're affected by infrastructure, by telecoms, by, so it's not just hotels, tour guides, and tour operators. In fact, it is much bigger than that. And part of what we've been doing is making sure that we are setting this right environment for that investment across that whole value chain. And a small part of that is this enablement program, which has involved a number of regulatory changes. We've smoothed investor journeys across different asset classes. We've reduced the fees that are demanded by the government from the private sector. I mean, this is a hard number, but between 2019, if you compare hotel operations today to 2019, government fees have been reduced by about 70%, which is no mean feat. We've introduced, like I mentioned, a number of regulatory changes which have eased that journey for licensing. Today, there's a 69% increase in the number of licensed entities operating in the kingdom, when I'm talking about the hospitality space. There's been a 32% increase, or 30-something% increase in the number of service providers, licensed service providers, travel agents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the most staggering number, and this is where we deliver that Saudiness, there's been a 168% increase in the number of tour guides. All because we've managed to simplify the licensing process. It's been much easier to enter. And of course, there is a much bigger business opportunity.
I have one more question. I know we're short on.
Finally, just on that, and probably the most significant one from an investment perspective, is just actually putting in this incentive program that we've created. It's a hospitality incentive program. It's focused on our emerging destinations. It has an objective of reducing operating expenses by about 25% of the capital cost. But that has been highly successful. We've got our first batch of projects nearly approved. That's about 3 billion Saudi riyal, all of it private sector. And hopefully they'll be hearing from us relatively soon. Sorry.
My last question. This is an incredible story, and this story, and I'm speaking the truth, the absolute truth here. This story couldn't have happened without the governance and structure and imagination and innovation that the government has provided. But as we in the private sector, what we're seeing, and I believe it's the desire, is a far greater influence from the private sector. As tourism grows, the private sector will grow. How and what initiatives and what is the philosophical desire of the government to, what part does it want to play as the plates shift?
Tourism is an interesting industry globally. It is one where the government typically has very little influence. Today, our industry is a nascent industry, even though it's 5 years in, but in its current form, it's relatively new. So therefore, our role within the government is to help, to facilitate, to fix. I see many familiar faces in the audience. Some of you may have heard this from me before. My role is to make my job redundant. It is our ambition that tourism investment happens without somebody talking to the ministry or a government entity saying how, where, and help. So once we reach to that position or that maturity, our role moves from facilitator to pure regulator. Our objective is to make sure that that business environment is there, opportunities clear for all to access. And the delivery of these projects happens in line with a national strategy. So we provide guidance, we provide the frameworks, but no interference. That's the ambition, and we are progressing very well to getting there. And you know, once we've achieved our mission, we will have a very mature sector that only interacts with you know, the government as a regulator. And that's really the ideal. Until then, we are a partner in facilitation, in making sure that we are you know, providing products. So last year, for example, you know, we did something a little bit different. We worked with the Tourism Development Fund, we worked with our incentive program, and our partners within the municipalities and other government entities to provide you know, land. On that land, we'd provide a concept. On that concept, we'd provide funding through the Tourism Development Fund. We'd provide the incentive program. And in order for that to just demonstrate the investability in these destinations and to seed these investments and to seed these destinations so that the private sector can say, you know what, there is an opportunity there, it is doable, we want to also play in that field.
Your Excellency, I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I thank you for your wisdom, for your leadership, and for all the Ministry of Tourism and the greater government is doing for the future of the kingdom. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.